Title: The instructions were engraved on my fingernails by the time I woke up. When I opened my eyes last Thursday, the first thing I noticed wasn't the gray light streaming through my blinds, nor the piercing sound of a pigeon cooing like a broken recorder outside my window. It was the deep, dull pain in my hands. A sort of throb beneath the skin, like something had been trying to claw its way out all night. My palms were crusted with blood, dried and cracked in the creases of my knuckles. But what truly made me stop breathing were my fingernails. Each nail had tiny, perfect symbols etched into them. Not scratched, engraved, like an artisan had taken a scalpel and hours of time. Letters, numbers, lines, and strange curls I couldn't interpret. Every nail was a puzzle piece in a script I'd never seen. I'm not prone to panic, but my hands were shaking uncontrollably, because there was no possible way I had done this to myself. I sleep lightly. The slightest creak wakes me. And this would have taken concentration, precision, pain. The doctor thought I was playing a prank. Dermatologist said it looked like scarification, but far too detailed to be accidental. She took photos. She even asked to publish them in a medical journal. I didn't allow it. Not because I was afraid of the attention, but because something about the engravings felt personal, sacred almost. And over the next 3 nights, I learned how horrifyingly personal they were. The first change came on Friday night. At exactly 1:17 a.m., I was pulled awake by the sound of breathing. Not mine. Not close. But somewhere in the apartment, a long, wheezing exhale, like hair passing through a chest that hadn't inflated in years. I grabbed the bat from under my bed and stormed into the hallway. Nothing. Just stillness and the slight click of my wall clock. But when I came back to my room, something had changed. My left thumbnail had shifted. The symbols weren't the same. They were clearer now, aligned in a perfectly straight line, forming something resembling coordinates: 14.1927 degrees north, 75.4435 degrees east. I googled them. A tiny location in India. A hilltop shrine with no name, no photos, just the words "unmarked site of containment, old registry." I didn't go. I'm not a lunatic. But I didn't sleep either. That night, something else was watching me. I could feel it every time I blinked, a presence too tall, bending wrong, hiding in the stillness behind doors I hadn't opened. The next morning, my index and ring fingers had new symbols. They matched an ancient Sanskrit dialect. I had them translated. It said, "You have been marked for the 7th script. 3 rules must never be broken. Do not share the pattern. Do not try to remove it. When the whisperer comes, you must answer exactly what your thumbs spell." I didn't know what that meant, until Monday night, when the lights went out and the whispering began. It wasn't coming from inside the room, it was inside my head, threading syllables into my thoughts, stitching itself through my memories. I couldn't think straight. I couldn't even scream. My thumbs began to burn. Literally, smoke started to curl from beneath the cuticles. I rushed to the bathroom, flicked a light, and saw something I'll never forget. The skin on my thumbs had peeled back, cleanly, no blood, no pain, just exposed bone beneath, and across the tips were tiny runes glowing with a dull red hue. They were words, I think. Words not meant for human mouths. I whispered them aloud. And I felt it enter. It wasn't dramatic. No shaking, no levitation. Just a feeling of weightlessness, like my chest had opened, and something old and lonely had crawled inside to rest. Since then, it's quiet. Too quiet. No noise in my apartment, no dreams, no hunger. But my nails are still changing. Every day, new symbols form. I don't know what they mean anymore. I think it's not a warning anymore, I think it's a countdown. Rules I've learned, and I'm breaking one now by telling you. 1. If you wake up and your nails are marked, do not Google them. 2. When the whisperer speaks, repeat only what's written, no more, no less. 3. If your thumbs start to burn, it's already too late. If you're reading this and you feel that itch beneath your nails, that pulsing beneath the bed of your fingertips, then I'm sorry. You were never meant to read this. And I was never meant to survive past the 7th night. Tonight is the 7th. And the symbols have stopped changing. They're just glowing now. I don't know what that means yet, but they haven't dimmed since dusk. It's like I've dipped my hands in molten copper, a slow, pulsating shimmer that reacts to my breath. I tried wrapping them in gauze, taping gloves over them, even soaking them in cold water. But nothing helps. The glow doesn't fade. It just waits. It watches me. At 2:33 a.m., all the clocks in my apartment stopped. I checked my phone. It still worked, but time wasn't moving. It's like the phone knows it's lying to me. Even the second hand on my analog watch hangs there, mid-tick, trembling, as if scared to go forward. And outside there are no cars. No footsteps. No sounds. Just a low hum, almost like a sigh, bleeding through the windows, a sound not meant for ears but for something older, deeper, buried in the marrow. I went to my front door, flung it open. The hallway was there, but wrong. Too long. The light flickered not in a pattern, but like it was blinking in response. I stepped forward, just once, and immediately felt the gravity shift. My feet didn't make a sound on the floor. My shadow stretched sideways, like it was being pulled toward something, like something beneath the floor wanted it more than I did. I backed up, slammed the door, locked all 3 bolts, and turned every light on. That was 4 hours ago. I haven't seen my reflection since. Every mirror in my place is just a blank pane now. No matter the angle, no matter the light, my reflection won't look at me. I wave my hands, move my head, shout at the glass. And nothing. The face staring back is always a moment too late, or too early, or staring off at something just behind me that I never see. I smashed them all after I caught my reflection blinking, but not with my eyes. There's something wrong with the air now. It's thick. Warm. Breathing on its own. I can smell iron and wet soil, not in the kitchen, not in the bathroom, inside my lungs. Every breath feels like I'm inhaling something freshly unearthed. I coughed earlier and a black string came out. Just a single, oily thread. It slithered for a moment before dissolving into the floorboards like it belonged there. At 3:06 a.m., the lights cut off again, but only in my bedroom. That's when I heard the ticking, not from the clock, but from under my bed, like fingernails tapping on hollow wood in perfect rhythm. Tick. 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 Faster and faster until it mimicked a heartbeat. I didn't dare look. I just pressed myself into the farthest corner and tried not to blink. Then the bed rose off the floor. Not lifted, levitated, as if gravity had been given new rules and was being rewritten by something that had forgotten how humans lived. A voice came from beneath it. Not loud. Not angry. Tired. Sad. Familiar. Mine. It whispered, "I'm still under here. But you're not." Then the bed dropped, but it made no sound when it landed. That silence was worse than anything. My nails started bleeding again. Not from the tips, but from underneath. The glow turned darker, the symbols now pulsing like veins under the surface of my skin. I could feel each one twitching, writing new stories inside me. I looked down and realized my arms were covered in writing, faint, barely visible lines, as if my skin had become a manuscript, documenting every second of what was happening. And then, around 4 a.m., the doorbell rang. I don't live in a building with a doorbell. There it was, one single ding. Not a chime. Just a single, pure tone. I approached slowly. My hands were buzzing like I'd touched an electric fence, the symbols glowing brighter with each step toward the door. The peephole was black. No hallway. No light. Just pure darkness. But I could feel the weight of something huge on the other side. Not tall. Wide. Stretching beyond the walls. It exhaled once, and the hallway lights outside turned red. I didn't open the door. I didn't have to. It opened itself. Nothing came in. Instead, the hallway changed. It wasn't a hallway anymore. It was a long corridor lined with dozens of versions of me, standing perfectly still, backs turned, faces unseen. All of them had glowing hands. All of them faced forward, waiting for something. And at the far end of that corridor was a door, solid obsidian, covered in the same script as my nails. It was slowly creaking open. Not outward. Inward, into a space I cannot begin to describe, except that it felt like the beginning of time was happening again inside it, but wrong this time. Distorted. Rewritten. The rules of light and dark were being unmade. I slammed my door shut. I screamed. And I waited. The corridor is still behind it. It doesn't go away. I haven't slept. I can't. Because now my eyes are glowing too. And my shadow won't stay attached. It keeps pointing down the hallway. It wants me to follow. I think tomorrow, I will. And I don't think I'll come back. If you find this, don't look at your hands. If they glow, it already knows your name. That sentence wasn't just a thought. It was etched somewhere in my head, repeating itself over and over like a cursed mantra. I tried not to look at my hands again, but they were impossible to ignore. The glow had become rhythmic, syncing with the pounding of my heart. Or maybe overriding it entirely. At this point, I wasn't sure my body was even working the way it used to. My blood felt thick. Cold. Like I was full of something that used to be alive but had long since stopped pretending to be human. That night, if it could still be called night in whatever version of reality I was occupying, I gave in. The hallway door had been open for hours, the corridor beyond it warping at the edges, stretching further with every glance, as if it grew the longer I resisted. The copies of me standing down that impossibly long path had begun to turn, one by one. Not fully. Just a tilt of the head, a movement of the shoulder, enough to let me know they knew I was watching them. Their faces were still hidden, but I could feel their attention, thick and wet, like fog pressing against my skin. They were waiting for me to step in line. I don't remember walking. 1 second I was staring into the corridor, and the next, I was inside it, surrounded by the quiet sound of breathing. Not my own. Not from the figures. It came from the walls, like the corridor itself was alive, inhaling and exhaling slowly, content that I had finally obeyed. The door behind me closed on its own, without a sound. I tried to turn around. I couldn't. My body wouldn't listen. My glowing hands pulsed once, and then they moved on their own. They reached out and pressed against the back of the version of me that stood directly ahead. My fingers sunk into its spine like I was sliding them into water. It didn't flinch. It didn't move. But as my hands passed through its back, I felt myself split. I was watching from behind, but I could also feel myself from the other side. My own heartbeat in duplicate. My own fear, reflected back and amplified until it no longer felt like emotion, but sound, a vibrating hum that bled into my teeth and made my bones ache. The corridor shifted again. The floor became soft. Breathing. Warm. With each step, it was like walking across something that resented being stepped on. The air grew thick with voices, whispers from mouths that didn't speak in words, but in ideas, half-formed thoughts leaking into my mind from the shadows above. One of them laughed, I think. A low chuckle that crawled along the ceiling and settled directly in my skull, where it nested like a spider. Eventually, the corridor ended. The obsidian door at the end was open, wide and silent, as if it had been waiting forever. Inside wasn't darkness. It was something worse, a color I don't have words for, a shifting, living hue that looked different every time I blinked. I stepped through, and everything changed. There was no sky. No ground. Just a vast, infinite space made of shimmering static, like television snow turned liquid and stretched into forever. Floating in the distance were more figures. Not like me. Not human at all. Bent wrong. Tall in a way that made perspective meaningless. Some had no faces. Others had too many. They floated in and out of sight like thoughts I wasn't allowed to finish. I couldn't scream. I couldn't think. My body folded in on itself, my vision tunneling until all I could see were the symbols on my hands, now glowing bright white, burning holes in the space around me. One of the beings approached. It didn't walk. It didn't fly. It simply was, closer every moment, without moving at all. It leaned forward, and where its face should have been was only a mirror, but not of my current self. It showed me. Future versions of me. Some screaming. Some silent. Some hollowed out like their insides had been scooped clean and replaced with static. One of them turned and looked directly at me through the mirror, eyes wide with the kind of terror no human should be capable of feeling. And it mouthed something. You open the 7th script. The being wrapped its long fingers around my face. I should have felt cold. Pressure. Pain. But instead, I felt understanding, an ancient, cosmic knowledge that drowned everything else. I knew things I shouldn't. Where time ends. What gravity actually is. What happens between seconds. I knew what the symbols on my hands meant, and that realization broke something in me. Because the last one wasn't a letter. It was a seal. And I had broken it the moment I entered this place. The space around me rippled. The other beings turned. The corridor behind me began to collapse, folding into itself with a sound like dry leaves being shredded. I tried to run, but I no longer had a body to run with. My form had dissolved into symbols, floating fragments of thought that screamed without mouths. The mirror being pushed me forward, into the center of the impossible place, where a shape, a thing so large it cast shadows through time, began to wake. It was never asleep. It had just been waiting. My final thought before my mind shattered was that the glowing wasn't a warning. It wasn't a curse. It was a beacon. A signal sent through time and bone to let it know who was ready to be used, who was soft enough to fold, whose soul was too curious to survive. And I was first. But not the last. If your hands glow, don't run. It's already inside you. And soon, you'll feel it waking up too.